Today, I am joined by someone whose music has made me cry, or at least made me sigh quite a few times, but I love it and I'm here for it. I discovered the band in 2020 when I was looking for some more ambient post hardcore while keeping all the emotions, and Lastelle just was perfect for it. And today I'm joined by Jonjo, their guitarist. Hi, Jonjo.
Hello, how are you? You all right?
Good, and you? Thank you.
I'm all good, very well, thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm happy that you're here. You just came back from tour. How was it?
Yeah, it was awesome. We had a really nice time. So we were on tour with the band Never Easy from Canada. It was their first UK tour, so it was really nice to join them on it. They were really nice dudes. The shows were great. Turnout was great. The weather was great, which is an unexpected surprise. But yeah, it was really good fun.
Let's just get into it. The first song you wanted to talk about is Woman Reading from La Dispute. Very good
Yes.
choice. And especially the part when we can hear, when you live here, when you go from a home, you take all that you own, but the memories echo. Why have you chosen this line?
That song kind of every time I hear it, it's really got like a kind of when you hear a song and it just kind of like hits you in all the right places to like make you really feel something. I feel like that's one of those tracks for me. And that is Beauty, one of those bands for me, and have been I think for a lot of people that they have so many songs that have that same feeling. But this one I think like as always it resonates with me a lot because I think that just that vibe that it's kind of putting together about the whole thing of memories in buildings and in rooms in houses that you lived in and have lived in and don't live in anymore or anything like that. It's always that kind of feeling that you'll always have the memories made in those places, whether good or bad. And when you leave those places, those memories kind of it feels like they still stay there in a sense where that's that place that those things happened, and it doesn't matter who's in that place or what's happening in that place now. It happened in that place, and that's kind of a thing that's always sat quite close to me, but like I'm just very aware of that as kind of a concept. There's a lot of sentimentality in locations and things like that. And so I think that song and that line, that little paragraph, just kind of sums up that whole feeling. I think quite nicely
Hmm.
and quite precisely. Yeah, I think that's just a vibe that resonates with me a lot. I think, yeah.
Maybe this is not what you're talking about, but when you're telling me about this, I'm thinking about there is this concept that in France we call la mémoire des murs, which translate to the memory of the walls. When something happened somewhere, the energy in it still stays. You know, if something very sad happened, for example, in this place, when you get there, you get a sad feeling. Is it also something that you believe in?
Yeah, I think that's a very similar concept to kind of what I'm on about. I think I feel like I wouldn't really call myself a spiritual person or anything, but I do feel like there is like an energy that kind of sits there, and it's
Hmm.
whether it's some people might think it's an actual physical energy, some people would just think it's the emotional or psychological thing of knowing that that kind of stuff happened there, which I think is more what I feel with that kind of thing. But it does kind of come out as exactly what that concept is. If it's even if it's a psychological thing, it feels like those memories are in the walls of that place, and you can't take that away from that place. You can't go there without associating that place with those memories if it's something that you're aware of, at least.
Mhm. Do you remember the first time you felt that? Maybe when you moved to a place or when you came back somewhere that you haven't been in a while and could feel
I think it's
the energy?
more the opposite for me. I think so. For like example, my family home that I grew up in, my parents have always lived there since I've been around. So, uh, in the idea that if they were to leave that, it would be really like strange for me to see that place because I still live fairly locally to them, and where I work, like day to day, is round the corner from them just by chance.
Mhm.
So I still go there regularly, and the idea of them moving, if they were to do that, would be like I couldn't associate that house with anything but that, and no matter what would happen to it afterwards, the concept of it always being a house that I have a strong emotional connection with wouldn't disappear even if they weren't in it, and it would just be a strange energy to go there or go past it that
Mhm.
we're going into someone else's house. But but yeah, just to go
Yeah.
past it, knowing that it's not that house, that it would have that kind of. You can take the people out of the house, but you can't take the memories that were made there away from it,
Mhm.
kind of thing. So yeah, for me, it's more the opposite. That I've the places that I have a very strong association with have always been associated with it, and for it to be different than that would be really strange for me. And I think also with when I was younger and stuff, like me and my friends would go regularly trying to find like abandoned places and like urbexing as it's called,
Mhm.
and go and not break in because we weren't about damaging the places we had found. It was more about experiencing them.
Mhm. Yeah.
So just be able to be in the presence of those places 'cause for that exact reason that there is like a real like energy and vibe to be in those places no longer occupied, and because you can see all those little telltale signs of when they were occupied and the history of it, and that does kind of paint a picture of things that once were and no longer are. And I think there is a lot of kind of there's a real like emotional resonance in that kind of stuff. I think to me, and whether even if it's just like set of offices, and it's nothing interesting as a building, still people went there every day, spent a lot of their life in those buildings. There's a lot of whether good or bad, there's still a lot of time spent and memories made in those places, and to go in it after that life's been kind of taken away from it, it's like a graveyard of memories almost.
Definitely, yeah.
It's definitely got like a vibe to it when you go in there, and it's you see all these places like that, and people go there, they do break in and they do vandalize and things like that, and people do that when you're teenagers, and it's a shame to kind of see that happen to those places because I
Mhm.
love the concept of like like when you go if it snows and like untouched snow, untouched by humanity kind of thing until you go out there and stand on it, and it's like held in time. It's kind of I find that with those places if you go to somewhere and it's not been touched for ages by a person, a human. It's just kind of been left to kind of stay in a particular state. There's a real kind of like eerie, but like nostalgic kind of vibe to it,
Mhm.
and I find that really interesting.
As you're saying, it's just material things, but in the end, it's also a lot of a graveyard of memories, like you
Yeah,
said, or a
exactly. Yeah,
graveyard
yeah.
of experiences.
What came from those material things, and those things have been left there,
Exactly.
and they may have been really important at some point. Or they may have just played a little role in something at one day. Yeah, everything's moved on from it, but they're still there, and those memories still kind of stay with them. I think, which is it's kind of a weird nostalgic, sentimental perspective on it, but it does really like resonate with me when I go into those places. I'm like, there's so many things that happen here that no longer are, and just that as a concept is really interesting.
I think we can tell from your music videos. For example, Tired Eyes, Coping Without a Cure, or Departure. Are they filmed in actually abandoned place or are they places that
A lot of our videos are, yeah. I mean, there is the whole kind of sort of joke of metal bands in abandoned places just being a stereotype, and it's not wrong, but I do think there is more to that. Like from like I said, my history of liking to find these places and go in and visit them. It's a really interesting thing to be able to go and do that and do the videos there and give those buildings another purpose for whatever reason. There's a big element of it just being they look cool and we need a cool looking location for music videos. Like that's an undeniable part of it. I think for me personally, and, the rest of the band might not agree with this, or they might not see it in the same way that I do. But for me, that is a massive part of it, being able to go there and kind of put yourself in this building that was once something very different. And but like the Tired Eyes video that we just did, that was an old school. We don't break into these places or anything; they are all owned and they have we're there legally, but um, and they've been repurposed as one thing or other. But most of the places we've gone into have been repurposed in a way that allows them to be kept in the state that they are. So that school was being used for like ghost tours and like haunted ghost tours,
really?
uh, which is really cool. So we booked it through the company that does that. We spoke to them. We sorted out using it for the video. So they kind of lean into the whole historical side of it, but from like a performative aspect for
Mhm.
the ghost tour stuff, which is really cool. We had a little look around. There's still all the lots of elements are there that would have been there from when it was a school. And it is that same thing. You're like, oh, okay, this is really interesting to see that this thing would have been here when it was a school and it would have been used for X, Y, or Z. And now it's just left to kind of rot in the corner. And it's like, like I said, there's an element of sadness and nostalgia, all that kind of stuff. And I really like the history of all of it, like just to find out stuff about it. Like another example, our first single that we released, this Cage I Built Myself, the music video for that was done in like an old Gothic Victorian manor that is in the UK. It's a national trust, so it's looked after and owned. but it still was like a disused Victorian Gothic manor, like a really cool building. And I dived into the history on it to find out, what was going on there, what it was used for, and it was used for like accommodating soldiers during the war and things like that. It's all really interesting and all that kind of stuff. When you're in there, knowing all of that, it's you look at the building with a different perspective, and I think it's really cool.
Definitely.
It was also on a in the UK we have there was a show called Most Haunted that was like all like
Mhm.
the most haunted places in the UK, and that was on an episode. So that
Oh,
was really
really?
funny. It's like, yeah, it's like really um overblown, kind of gimmicky, like, oh, there's ghosts in the walls, and we went here, and a brick fell out the wall, and like that was just really funny to then go in there and see all the things that they were talking about, and like the ghost stories that were kind of made up about it, and then to try and like, oh, that was the bit that was in the show when this happened. And but yeah, it is, yeah, that's a bit more gimmicky, but still the whole like history of it was genuine and really cool. And yeah, it's just nice to kind of put yourself in the place where these things that I looked into had happened, and whether it only be minor things, but it was still, it went through generations of owners, generations of uses, and that's kind of cool to be where that was and is no longer.
I think it really reflects also your music because there's a lot of nostalgia in it.
Yeah, a lot of our songs deal with the whole thing of what once was but is no longer is a big part of lots of our
Mhm.
songs, whether it comes down to like subjects of loss, like losing loved ones, death, or relationships and things like that. It's at least one of the things for me when writing lyrics is very much like, apart from some songs where there is more of like a really obvious like linear story, a lot of them are written in a way that's kind of like, this is how I feel, but it's not 100% specific to my exact situation. Someone else can probably read that and go, I felt that, because it's
Mhm.
not like, I'm not naming names, I'm not naming places in a lot of it. It's kind of more explaining how you feel, and that is more universal, I think. So I've kind of been I write a lot of the stuff with genuine things in mind, but written in a way that I think anyone could is more likely to relate to it.
Can relate to it in their own way, and there is no
Exactly.
right or
Yeah.
wrong interpretation of
Yeah.
them.
100%.
When you were in one of those places, have you ever felt anything? I guess you haven't experienced the whole, was it called Most Haunted experience, like the TV show that you were talking
Yeah.
about?
Nothing. Nothing quite
Or
like that.
more just a
But
feeling, like nothing
yeah,
spiritual, but
it's just a general kind of like. I mean, some of them definitely more creepy than others.
Mhm,
But and I think when you spend a whole day there doing a video, by the end of it, you feel quite comfortable there. Where the first hour or two, you might feel a bit, oh, this is a bit spooky. Although saying that, actually, the place we filmed Tired Eyes, because that was back in January when we filmed it, it was still getting really dark really early. So when we got there, it was nice, and it wasn't warm, but it was sunny. And as it got on towards the end of the shoot, it got pitch black, and there was no lights in there. So it was just like, yeah, the lights we had were what we could light the shoot with. It was, yeah, unless your phone was on, and you were walking around, it was pitch black. And that was quite
mhm.
creepy.
I can imagine, yeah.
And you definitely did feel like, sort of just checking behind you every now and then, just in case.
Maybe you had a whole crowd, checking on you and you don't even know it. A
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
crowd of
exactly.
ghosts.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
just
So it was,
vibing, yeah.
yeah, it's not being in like, because I'm not really a paranormal like believer or anything, but like for me, it's more about the history and memories more than they might still be there kind of thing. Like
Mhm.
yeah, like it's about what once was and is no longer, as opposed to what might still be there. I've not felt that kind of thing, but it is just like just a generally a bit spooky. We filmed another music video which is yet to be released, which is in a similar kind of place again,
Mhm.
and that had a really like a bit of a maze of a cellar. So you go down, and it was like connecting all the buildings that we were in like together. And there was like black arrows drawn on the walls, so you don't get lost down there, because it really was a bit of a maze, and that was pretty spooky down there.
Yeah, I can imagine, for example, in an old school, you can imagine all the life that were here, all the children running around, and now it's not
Yeah,
here anymore.
and now they're not. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's you kind of look at it through a different lens when you look at it, going like, I'm stood here. What would have been happening here 50, 60, 70, whatever years ago?
Yeah, and puts things into a different perspective. Like we are
Yeah,
just one tiny dot in the whole
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
timeline.
yeah. Me being here for this day is nothing on the whole lifetime of this building. of everything that's gone on here from start to finish, and what will continue to go on for. Yes, that's definitely like part of it. You're a little dot on the story, and there's a lot more story to be had or has
Hmm.
before. Yeah, it's all quite interesting how many things have gone through, happened, and disappeared.
I think it can help you seeing things, as I said, in a new perspective, and you're just here for such a short amount of time. Might as well
And
do the
that's one of the
things
things I think
that
I
you.
find quite interesting with being in a band in general, and any kind of form of creative media or art where we put a music video out, and that freezes that place in time in the video as it was. And then I think that kind of the same way that when I was looking about these locations in the history, I saw pictures of it when it was in the 1800s being used for X, Y, or Z. Like now it's not that, but that's what it looked like then. And then we're
Mhm.
doing the kind of the same thing with putting our music videos in that location, and it's another. Whilst it's a little tiny dot on the timeline of the building, there is a permanent recording of that tiny dot in the shape of the videos. And I think that goes on to a wider thing with music in general, and like I said, art in general, where we are a tiny speck of the history of humanity individually. I think writing music and releasing music, and like I said, all other forms of art goes beyond you. So I'd like to think that hopefully, when in another, say, 100 years, maybe somewhere, someone can still listen to a LaStelle song.
We don't know how they will be able to do that in 100 years, but
I don't
I'm
know.
pretty
Yeah,
sure they will
might
be
be
able
injected
to.
straight to the brain. You don't know.
Just a chip playing your songs
Yeah,
over and
exactly.
over
Yeah, yeah.
again.
But I hope someone can access via their little brain chip a LaStelle
Mhm.
song.
At least you can also tell yourself that it's already touching people, like what you are doing. Because if I read the comments, for example, like people can really relate to it because you write, as you said, in a way that people can relate to songs and really appropriate it to themselves. So at least for now, and I think it's pretty universal what you're talking about too. So probably in 100 years, it will still be valid.
Yeah, it's really nice to see people like relating to the songs in ways that we hoped they would, and get that kind of feedback. And that is something we hoped, but never really like expected in a sense. We're always going to go with the band of the motto of high hopes, low expectations. I think it's the best way to be when you're
Hmm.
working in music, because or any creative industries, because it's always hard. When we spend so much time writing and performing the songs, and proud of them when they get released and they go out with a really, not say deep meaning, but like they have a meaning to them. They have a purpose beyond just being a piece of music. Like to write them and perform them is a release in itself emotionally, and it's great to see that it's hitting people in the way that we wanted it to, and they're getting something out of it, which is really nice.
Yeah, I can
Definitely.
definitely understand that.
I think for me as well, like there's always a bit of a joke, a bit of a joke in the band that I'm a robot, because because like
Why?
I'm not Mr. Emotional, but when I write lyrics, that's how I kind of express that kind of stuff. Like that's I've always been fascinated with like sad. I don't like. I'm not into happy music. It doesn't resonate with me, because I'm generally just like, I'm very blessed to not suffer from bad mental health. I'm generally a pretty chipper guy in general. So for me to when I listen to happy music, I'm like, well, this just isn't doing anything for me, because
Hmm.
like I'm already there. Where sad music is like it hits me differently, and it
Hmm.
hits me in a way that I'm not used to feeling almost. And again, Lavis Speed, one of the reasons I brought them up is because they're a really good band for that. Like their storytelling in his lyrics is so like it puts you right there in it, and
Hmm.
it's really immersive, and you can just kind of fully feel the emotion of what is being spoken about or sung about. And I find that it opens up a different way of listening to music that other music doesn't really do for me. And I don't find that just in lyrics, and I listen to a lot of instrumental music, and I feel
Hmm.
like melody and note choice can portray just as much emotion if done right. And there's loads of brilliant bands for that. Or it doesn't even have to be in English if it is singing that, so I don't have to understand the lyrics to be able to kind of feel the emotional content of them. And I think if you can do that without having lyrics, or people understand the lyrics, then that can go. the song is written in the way that it was meant to be to portray the emotion that was meant to be portrayed. And obviously, then if you can tie the both together, then you're onto a winner. Uh, yeah, so that music for me is very much just like I say a release, an escape kind of thing. Like it puts me in a different like mindset to day to day stuff. And then people might be saying or wondering like, why do you want to feel sad? I'm like, it's just like it's amazing that something can put you in that state when you're not actually feeling like that. And then you
Mhm.
stop listening to it, and then you're like, okay, cool, like I'm back to where I was. But just that little like immersive moment when you're listening to an album or a song or whatever, I just find it like amazing that it can make me feel like that just by sat down listening to something. That's always been something I've been wanting to portray when writing music and writing lyrics. So yeah, seeing people comment on stuff saying that made me feel like that, I'm like, great. I
That
guess
was the point.
that's kind of that's what I want. That's what I wanted to happen. That's like that was what it was for me. So I want to be able to make other people have that about our music. I want other people to feel
Mhm.
what I felt listening to the bands that I love that do that. So getting confirmation of that, it feels weird saying it makes me feel good that I made them feel sad, but yeah, that's kind of how it is. I'm glad it's had the impact that kind of music's had on me.
I guess you're also doing it to get some balance in your emotions, to
Yeah,
get the whole
there's
spectrum
an element
of
of
it.
it. Yeah, because I'd say it's not one of those things where like I've never felt sad. That's absolutely not the case. Because a lot of the songs are written about personal situations of myself that I've gone through. Again, usually regarding like either loss in terms of death or relationships and things like that. That all comes from a real place, and I feel like being able to write about it in that context of a song is a really great release for someone that bottled up, never dealt with it kind of way. Because when those things happen, it sucked, and I was very sad about those things. But it's just another way of being able to release that emotion, which isn't it's the opposite of kind of bottling it up. It's like there's the release. Like I've got a way of doing that that means that I can then kind of maybe that's helped me be more stable in other ways because I can put it into that. and
Probably, yeah.
and it also just means that like these songs mean a lot to me because of they came from a personal place in my mind. Like it wasn't these songs aren't just written to be sad for the sake of being sad. I think there is a big part of me that wants to be able to put my own thoughts and own feelings and what I've gone through into the music. And it's not just me that write. I mean, I write a lot of the lyrics, but the other guys in the band also write lyrics, and I think it's the
Mhm.
same for them. Fred, our bassist, trumpet, flugelhorn player, singer, one of the three, he writes the lyrics as well, and we often do it as like a collaborative thing. So there will be songs that I've written 90% of, and there'll be songs that he's written 90% of, and we'll take our own thoughts and feelings, and we will go back and forth and rehash lyrics to the point where we're both happy with them, and then they end up in a point that we're all kind of like, cool, we all like this song, but the majority of it comes from one person's perspective and feelings. And Fred's put his thoughts and feelings into the stuff that he's written. So has Adam and so has Mike when they've written lyrics as well. We know our music is the sound that we've kind of put together and people know us for is very emotional, but that's because that's what we like to write about, not because we're trying really hard to make people sad as a kind of forcing it thing. It's just like that's what I listen to, it's what I enjoy, it's what I want to be able to make other people feel. Like I said, and I so for me to, I feel like you make people feel that by being genuine. You can't force that kind of emotional reaction on someone. I think they need to feel like what
Mhm.
they're being told to feel when they listen to a song is coming from a place of realness. Otherwise, I think it kind of seems forced and will go over their heads a bit. Like, and it won't be met with the reaction that it's people want it to. We're not doing anything to try and put feelings in people's heads and not be behind the music ourselves. Like it's despite me not being generally a very happy person. I relate to the songs. They're about things that I've gone through in the past,
Mhm.
and that is my little release. That's where I can channel those feelings and then not have to deal with it maybe in so much in everyday stuff. It's nice to have a when you've got a place where you can go and release that kind of negative energy, then when you've got something you want to talk about,
Mhm.
deal with, I've got a little, even if it's just in my notes app on my phone, which is where everything gets noted down. It's just the fact that I've ever put something down is is good for me
Yeah.
mentally.
Yeah, you find your way of communicating when it's not necessarily just calling a friend and telling, "Hey, I'm feeling like this right now," but you're writing it. And I
Yeah.
guess as a band, if you write songs together, it might also bring you guys closer because you bring all of your experiences together. And
Yeah, I do think that's one of the things with us is that we are best mates as well as bandmates. So writing these lyrics is kind of putting that on a plate for them to see and then discuss about. Because if we're going to go do a collaborative method of writing lyrics, you know, if Fred wants doesn't quite like how I've worded a lyric and wants to be able to have suggestions on it, then it helps for him to know where I'm coming from with it, and vice
mhm,
versa. I don't, you know, none of us. I don't think any of us really shy away from talking about things to each other. We've all had deep conversations with each other, either be it in the tour van or you know one on one when we're just hanging out and stuff. Like we're all very good at being there for each other as friends beyond just being bandmates. And I think if we weren't, it would be hard to write songs like we do about the things that we write about if we didn't feel like the people that we were doing it with cared or could understand what we're talking about, kind of thing. So I
mhm,
think by all of us being very open with each other and happy to listen to each other when needed, it means that you can be more open in the songwriting side of stuff. Like, I mean, maybe it might be different if one of us was the sole lyric writer and it didn't matter, but because we do it as a collaborative process, we kind of need it to everyone to be able to listen. And because if you are writing a song from quite like a vulnerable perspective, you don't want someone to come in and then go, well, I think it should say this, and completely change the meaning of it. Because I'm like, well, now that isn't what I was trying to portray, and I don't really relate to it as much. But there's also like kind of the opposite can happen. Like Life in Silhouettes, our track was written between me and Fred, and I started the writing and had like a chorus. Then Fred, he drew a meaning from it. Because a lot of the stuff, like, you know, sometimes lyrics come down and they don't necessarily have, we don't always start with this song is about this. Sometimes it is just a case of I've got these lyrics, they sound quite cool, they have somewhat of a meaning to them. I wonder what we can make out of them. Like you were saying earlier about like being able to have your own artistic interpretation of them. Fred went, that means this to me, and then the song grew from that, and the rest of the lyrics were written from that perspective, which was more from Fred's side. And then whenever I would be suggesting things, it would be making sure that it fitted with the meaning that now Fred was writing towards. And for me to be able to do that, we had to be able to talk about it and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it makes and that helps keep that writing process like more genuine. And as I said earlier, I think that is an important thing.
I would have never guessed that it was teamwork for the song lyrics.
I think it's quite common with a lot of bands. I think most bands tend to have like the front man does the songwriting, but we've always, I think, because when we started the band, I was the most experienced lyric writer because I was in the band before. I didn't write the lyrics for that band, but I worked with that band's front man to. He would write the lyrics, and we go back and forth, and then I'd be the guy that would go in and be, oh, what about this? What about this? Maybe we could reword that, and then there was an element of collaborativeness, but it was mainly him writing it. So when we started this band, I was the only one that had any like real lyric writing experience. So it just kind of fell on me at the beginning. And when we first started, Fred hadn't joined the band yet. So Fred joined very shortly after we started. Our original bassist, who's still a really close friend of mine, went into being a chef and didn't work with the band and stuff. So he dropped out like pretty much at the beginning of the band after we kind of did like a show or two, and he very quickly went, oh, this doesn't work. And then we found Fred super quickly because he was a good friend of Mike's, and then Fred kind of fell into it with me as a lyric writer. Like I said, Adam and Mike also do like bring stuff to the table with it, but I think a lot of the time when they bring stuff to the table, it's more they'll start with something more like a line or maybe a vague idea or a melody or something, and then often then me and then Fred will take it and work it from there. And that's happened a few times, like "Breathe Me In," which has become now our probably most well known track. The chorus idea of "Breathe Me In" was just Mike. He kind of just went, "I've got an idea. It's this," and then we took that and wrote the rest of the song around that one main vocal line. And we took the lyric "Breathe Me In," figured out an interpretation, wrote into what that lyric meant for us,
Mhm.
because it's a bit of an open-ended like line. Like it doesn't really have an obvious meaning, so it is quite open. So Mike started with that, then Fred wrote the second half of the chorus around it from his interpretation, and then we moved from that because that song is mostly a Fred song. So yeah, it's the little nuggets come in from Mike and Adam, and then we'll expand. Me and Fred tend to expand upon them, and that's usually how most of it goes. Which is funny because I don't do any vocals in the band. So for me, I've just got to try and translate it to the vocalist, which is sometimes a bit of a challenge.
You have your own idea of how they should be interpreted, and
Yeah, so I write lyrics melody first, so or with the screaming vocals, it would be rhythm first. So I have it all in my head, like to the song. I don't tend to just write lyrics and then give it to the vocalists for them to then put into the song. I write the melody first in my head, then the lyrics come to the melody, and then I have to translate that whole thing to the vocalists. So that usually ends up with me being, yeah, with a microphone in this little room, just sort of whisper screaming and singing quietly to kind of get the melody down over the demo, and then sort of processing it so it's actually in tune, and then sending that over to the band, and then often then they'll add their own parts on top and change it. So then we'll get together, demo the songs to my scratch vocals, and things will be added, taken away that as the session goes along in terms of like melodies and timings and stuff. Usually the lyrics tend to kind of stay as they are unless we get to a lyric and they're like, I don't know, and then we do the collaborative thing, change stuff around.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's lots of little bits where it only happens by someone else doing what I've written and then going, I'm going to do it like this instead. And then that does
Mhm.
little like gems of, well, I think one of the prime examples of that is our song Pine, which opened the Exist Volume 1 EP that we just dropped. That's done really well for us since releasing. And it was actually not like a single. And when we dropped the EP, it was the only song that didn't get like, well, it was the only song that didn't get a music video. It was just kind of meant to be the intro track for the EP. And I think in this day and age where you can just do a social media campaign as and when you want for the song, if it's already out, it doesn't really matter, because if you haven't, these people on TikTok and Instagram, the reels and stuff, they haven't heard your music yet. So
Mhm.
you might as well just start promoting a song that came out 6 months ago, because you're still going to get new people. And that's what we did with Pine. We released it afterwards and it did really well. So that's become like a track that a lot of our fans are really fond of now. But the hook, as we call it, or the bit, is when it kind of drops into the big guitars and Mike does a big like held out note and just like a little bit at the end. I can't do that. And that was just I was out of the room. I think I was either like getting dinner or something, and Mike was just messing around in here, demoing it, and just put like this, like almost as a joke, a silly little like vocal flick at the end of it. And actually, I came up and I was like, "That sounds great.
This is it.
That's really cool." That now seems to be the part of that song that really kind of makes people go, "That's really cool." And it was kind of a
It is,
joke.
yeah.
So yeah, that those little magic moments that only happen kind of in the moment can make or break a lot of stuff. And I think that sometimes only happens when we do it collaboratively, because someone misinterprets or reinterprets
Mhm.
someone else's ideas, and then we go, "Oh wait, that's really cool." And that wouldn't happen if it was one person doing everything. I think it's quite nice to have that, and obviously having multiple vocalists with Adam, Mike, and Fred all doing vocals, everyone's got a different ear for what they would want. And again, Fred doing mainly the harmonies, he is not so much the main melody, but what he can do on top of it. And then sometimes he'll go, the melody we've got sounds cool, but it doesn't leave me much room to do anything in between the main melody and the music underneath it. If that note was this note instead, then I can do this harmony and then I can elevate it more. And that kind
Mhm.
of stuff helps shape the melodies a bit and stuff as well. And that comes from having two different ears on it. And I think that's often where the magic is. It's just those little moments that between conversations and more than one person being involved just happens, which is cool actually. I prefer it being that way, because as much as I have written a lot of songs and a lot of lyrics now, doesn't mean I know best.
It all makes sense because when you listen to it, you cannot really guess that this is how it happened. But now that you say it, this is what makes Lastel.
Yeah, well, I think that is a big part of it. Like it is the very much the culmination of all of us and all of our experiences and likes and dislikes. We have, whilst we're all on the same kind of spectrum when it comes to taste in music, we're also very different within that. So, we always have arguments in the van about I've put a song that's too long on, everyone's bored because it's 12 minutes long. That kind of thing happens regularly. So yeah, we have our disagreements within music taste within the band, and that stuff helps the sound be shaped more because like as the sort of more obvious example is that I'm big into like I said instrumental music as well, and I like lots of like post rock bands, long expansive songs, regularly instrumental, and then quite often Mike does not. He comes from more of like a alt rock, post hardcore, emo-y background, so he likes stuff more energetic and generally a bit more aggressive. Not heavy, but just like faster paced. Where I like
Mhm,
stuff very slow and ploddy almost. And that kind of not disagreement, but like difference in like what we prefer,
yeah.
and we end up sitting in the middle of that. Like we've got lots of atmospherics and a few longer tracks and reverby guitars, but it's all kept within that kind of like quite drivey sort of post-hardcore, sometimes more metally sort of vibe within all the atmospherics and reverby slowness. So
Mhm,
yeah, I think like if we didn't, if it was just me, we would be far more off in the direction of not proggy, but like not standard song structures, longer songs, lots of ambience
mhm,
and atmospherics. That other side of the band drags me back when I'm writing, and end up sitting in the middle. And I'm always thinking when I'm writing, I'm like, I know, so you've got to write for yourself, but I'm also writing for the other members of the band. I know I'm the one sat here writing these songs, but there's no point me writing that song that I know Mike or Adam or Rich isn't going to enjoy it. So I've still got to write within the boundaries of what I want everyone to do, and that itself kind of shapes the music in a different way. And then once I've written a demo, I'll put it in our chat. We'll end up getting to looking at the song more closely when vocals come to it, because usually I just write the songs instrumentally and then we look at vocals afterwards. Then conversations come from there of being like, well, actually, if we're going to do these kind of vocals, that section doesn't need to be there, or we need to repeat that section again, but get rid of that one, and that kind of stuff comes when the vocals go on top. And there's a lot of songs that have changed massively once you've got past usually like a first draft for vocals, and then we go, why aren't we gelling with this song? What's wrong here? And
mhm.
then it might just be that there's too much of the song, or there's not enough of that bit, or this bit goes on too long, and then it all gets changed around and chopped, and everyone has their opinion then. As someone that loves instrumental music, I'm hearing a song when I hear it instrumentally, but then, like I said, Mike, who's generally not so much of a fan of instrumental music, he only hears a song when the vocals get put onto it. And
Mhm.
that's when someone like Mike will go, and now I have an opinion on what the song's like because I can visualize the whole song. Whereas before that, when it was just instrumental, he's like, it's not finished yet. I can't tell you whether I like it or not yet, which is totally fair enough. And again, it's just those differences of opinions that end up us meeting in the middle point, which I think is what the Stell is. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So you told me that sometimes you just start with one line, for example, to write the lyrics. The second song and line you wanted to talk about is from your new song, Tired Eyes, or your
Mm.
latest song, and in which we can hear, let me dream of a place where your absence isn't killing me, where my mind can go to escape the very thing that was keeping me here. Is it an example of a line that you were thinking about and you wrote around it?
So I think that line was one of the later lyrics when we were writing, but I think that particular part of the song, that those lyrics, sum the song up quite nicely. I feel like those lyrics out of context make sense as a standalone paragraph. You can kind of see what the vibe is. You can get the feeling that's trying to be portrayed in those 4 lines. Yeah, those 4 lines I think kind of sum up the feeling of like this is where the perspective is from the emotion in that song. It's about something that you once loved and really wanted to be something that continued has gone horribly wrong, isn't what it used to be, and as much as you want it to be still a thing, you have to escape it, and that's for the better.
Mhm,
Which is kind of what those lines are kind of summing up about the whole thing of the very thing that was keeping me here being like a relationship and the thing you wanted to be there for and still be wanting to still want to be there for, but you know that you need to get away from that to be okay, to feel all right. And it's not necessarily a song about, oh, they broke up with me or I broke up with them. It's more about the realization that it isn't working, but you really want it to. But you just kind of got to knock the nail on the head and be like, look, this needs to stop because it's not healthy for either of us, kind of thing. I think those are kind of the harder ones because that's a slow burn. There's no ripping the band-aid off in those kind of things. It's all
mhm.
if neither party is really wanting to admit there's a problem. It just takes a lot of dealing with the shit to eventually kind of go, no, this really isn't working. And as much as we've tried, it's not. And I feel like most people have been there at some point. I feel like most people I know have usually, myself included, have had that one relationship which went on a lot longer than it should have done. And as much as you didn't want it to end, you kind of knew it needed to, but as to whether you'd actually do anything about it, either because of being too scared to be without that or being too comfortable, it hasn't happened yet. And that's kind of where that's what that song is kind of about. And yeah, I just think that paragraph kind of sums up the whole thing and puts all the kind of maybe more not as obvious lines into a perspective with that one little paragraph. So I think it came
Mhm.
later because it just kind of where it is in the song, once the verses had been written, the chorus had been written, it was just like let's take all that, sum it into one little bit here, and then that really, and because that's when the song kind of changes, being the middle eight, it's like the whole song changes up a little bit, it gets a bit bigger, and it just sums everything up in that one sort of bit as kind of the climax of the song. I'd say I chose that line because I think it's one of my favorite lines in the song, just lyrically, but also subject
Mhm.
matter wise. It just puts it all together.
It's funny because once again you're talking about a place, and when here it's a bit more like a mental place, I guess, or
Yeah,
a different state of mind.
that still can kind of be associated with where you are and the feelings that come with being in a certain place. So it's not quite the same thing, but it still fits in that same kind of concept slightly because it's the place that you are in physically isn't bringing good vibes. So
Mhm.
yeah, you need to mentally and physically follow that to somewhere where you can escape the bad
Mhm.
bits, which usually ends up meaning cutting off that a
Yeah.
relationship isn't working. So yeah, it's not quite the same thing, but again, I think it's the whole concept of just like the concept of a place that you're happy in. And when we talk about the old buildings and all that kind of stuff, it's they were places that someone was probably quite happy in at some point. And
Exactly. Your brain or your head is still thinking about when it was a happy place.
yeah,
And yeah, there is a
well, yeah,
disconnect.
exactly that. Like in that situation, you're probably looking back on when it was. If you live with someone in a house at home, and at one point that was probably a really happy environment, and then as things go from bad to worse, it tends to be soured, and you'll look back on those good memories, and then look at where you are now and be like, I know that I can't be here anymore. As much as I wish I could be, I can't
Mhm.
take yourself out of it, despite knowing. And then yeah, that you leave that place behind, then those memories stay there, and we're back to square one.
Exactly. In the music video, I think it's not available anymore, but before releasing the music video, you asked on Instagram, I saw mostly for people to send you voicemails about what they wished they would have said.
Yes, yeah. So we did this thing where we made it clear when we announced the project that they would only be available for 48 hours and they would disappear after that. So it was kind of just meant to allow anyone to have an anonymous dump of emotion that they had. And the whole kind of concept behind it was, which is tying into all the visuals you'll see from our exist stuff with the answering machine has been like featured heavily over lots of music videos and will continue to be. This whole concept of messages to someone that will never hear it is kind of the overarching line that we keep coming back to like describe and help visualize what concepts we want to be showing and doing. And that was exactly kind of the point of that. It was to allow people to have the chance to say something that they haven't and wanted to or never realized until we gave them that opportunity that they did want to say it.
Mhm.
It was heard 48 hours and then they went. So it won't be heard again. That was kind of that the whole point was for it to be an anonymous, non-permanent sort of purge of emotion. Again, going back to the subject matter of a lot of our music being about loss. Usually, that tends to be that those things do get left unsaid, and if once someone passes away, you don't get the chance to say it. If a relationship breaks up, suddenly you often don't talk to those people, that person anymore, and things might be done differently. If you look back on it and you wish you could say those things now, but
Mhm.
it's too late, and they just get kind of people just sit with them a lot of the time, and they're constantly going over of I wish I was able to say this, and they never were. And the whole kind of point of that voicemail thing was to at least allow people to say it out loud and hope that I think for a lot of people they did say it was just like it was nice to be. It was as much as it was negative things they were talking about. It was great to be able to say about it. So again, hearing people say that it helped them in a way that we hoped it would was really nice. And we were actually really overwhelmed with how many people got involved. Like when we did it, we were like, "This could flop, and we might get two." But we got loads of them. Like loads of people rang in, and if from all over the world as well, different countries. Like it wasn't just people here in the UK. It was people in Australia, people in all over Europe, so in America. So yeah, we got people all over the world, which is really nice. Like it's just we weren't really expecting it to do as well as it did. Not that we didn't have any faith in it, but you just never really know with that. It's a lot to ask of someone to ring a number and talk about something that is a hard thing for them to talk about. So yeah, we were really overwhelmed with how much people got involved with it, which is really nice to see.
I think it shows really how people trust you to tell you because in the end you were the ones hearing it first. I think it really helps that we can relate to your lyrics and so it feels like we feel like a connection to the band.
Well, yeah, I feel like it.
Mm.
Yeah, it makes sense for a band like us that's written about those kind of things consistently to do. We'd earned the trust of fans to know that like something we generally genuinely wanted to do for genuine reasons. There is always the argument, well, it was all for press. And like, there's always that argument for everything a band does. Everything a band does is to be seen by fans and the public. But why not be able to do something that works from a press angle and also helps fans in a genuine way? Like that's the best of both worlds. And that was kind of the whole idea behind it. It was like, let's do something unique, but something
Mhm.
that actually is more than just marketing. It's a something that could actually possibly help people and get over something. And
Mhm.
so it felt quite nice to do that. People had actually put that much trust in us and were willing to open up as much as they did. So we were just really stoked with how well that went.
Mhm.
Because we do our own music videos. Well, I say we. Adam, our frontman, has done the last few music videos, and Rich has done some in the past as well. So they own a video production company together. But Adam had to then go through and edit all of the voicemails that came in. So he
Mm.
had to sit there and listen through all of them
Yeah,
and put them in. And he said that was a very tough job.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a lot to take on.
yeah. It's a lot of not usually that much emotion involved with doing an editing job. So yeah, soldier through that one, but it was hard.
And is it also something that you could have used? Is there something that you wish you would have said?
Well, that's kind of for me. This is what's quite nice about having the band is that that's kind of what I can use the music for. It's
Mhm.
like it's in terms of like specifics, like the two that I think have been the most closest to me lyrically is "Departure" and "Coping Without a Cure" because I wrote "Departure" about my uncle who passed away 8 years ago now, maybe with cancer, which was obviously like a horrible. He's the reason I play guitar and stuff, so he was a real
Mhm.
close family member. And "Departure" was about that, and "Coping Without a Cure" was about my nan who passed when I was much younger, but that was Alzheimer's. And if you read lyrics, it's all about like it's kind of written from her perspective, but as if her old self was still in there, but not being able to communicate. And that's kind of the
Mhm.
perspective that. So those two songs are sort of two very sort of close to me things of loss. But I got the chance to kind of to have that as an outlet for
Mhm.
those things. And those aren't the only two songs about those subject matters. Like I don't have to write just one song about it. I can keep going. They're very, very close things to me that that have you been through, and those memories and of the good times and the bad times still stick with you. So I've still got more to say about them, and I can use the band and the lyric writing as a method to be able to do that. So for me, I've got that escape via that,
Yeah.
which is nice. So I feel like things that I don't might not feel comfortable saying to someone out loud, I can scribble down in my little notes app on my phone and then make a song out of it and then put that out to the public. And that's my way of talking about those things. And that is really nice to have. And I think again, like I said, it helps. This music wouldn't work, I don't think, if it wasn't genuine. And so I pour all that genuine experience into the lyrics, and that's where it comes from. So, and some other songs about some things are, there is an element of dramatization in lyrics. It's
Yeah, sure.
theatre of the word. So there is an element of that to it in some cases, but a lot of it is 100% genuine. And the things that are maybe dramatized somewhat are coming from a place of realness, and then just for trying to approach the song from a more interesting songwriting perspective, little embellishments go a long
Mhm.
way. But the core subject matter is always taken from a real world experience in some way. The only song of ours that I think really isn't from that is on our first EP. We had a song called "The Silence Hurts the Most," and we very much went for like a completely story-driven perspective narrative for that song. So it is like there is characters, there is their perspectives, and we are aiming to continue that. So with Exist Volume 2 coming out, and there is Silence, The Silence Hurts the Most Part 2. And that is going to continue that same story with the same characters. It's probably the only exception to the way we write lyrics, but that was a very conscious choice that we were going to try something different with that song. So yeah, that is probably the only example where I haven't approached it from that same perspective. But it's all dealing with, it's a story, but the characters are still going through emotions that we have, or not in the same way, but I've dealt with loss, and therefore I can understand what people might feel in those situations. So you can write a story from an element of genuineness, even if it's not something that I've experienced exactly. So yeah, that song is, and then part two, which will come out with the EP, is a different approach entirely, but everything else very much comes from a, this is me or Fred or Adam or Mike
Mhm.
putting their feelings on the table for the lyrics.
That's also interesting, I guess, to write from a different point of view, and it makes me think a bit of La Dispute. I forgot the name of the album, but the album with King Park and all those
Yeah.
songs. It's
I mean, I would be lying if I said they weren't an inspiration for that.
a very good inspiration. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I've seen La Dispute live a few times now, and I think first time I saw them was like 2014 on a tour, doing touring Rooms of the House, and obviously they played a lot of songs from that. It was the first time seeing them. It was their headline tour, so everyone was there for them. I've seen them a lot of festivals, and I saw them when they last came to the, was it last time they came to the UK at Coco in London? Amazing gig. But the first time I saw them was a smaller venue, and everyone was there for them. And the energy that the crowd had when King Park played was like nothing I've seen before at a live show. Everyone knew every word, and obviously that song is incredibly tense.
Yeah.
And just that live energy for that song was like, that's like a core memory for me when seeing bands live. If I'm looking back on bands I've seen live, it was just people piling on top of each other to get to the mic just for that, just for the line. Yeah, it was wild, and I've like that song even without that live experience. That song anyway is pretty heavily ingrained in my mind as like an example of lyrical storytelling that really is very intense. And then seeing it live and how people connected with it, even though it was a story, it wasn't, they weren't relating to that situation, because obviously that song's about
Mhm.
someone regretting killing someone in a drive-by shooting. Like it's, I don't think most kids at the gig were there thinking, "Well, that time I did that." But it was yeah, it's it's not a relatable situation, but
Mhm.
it's told in such a way where you are so invested in what's going on in the story, and you feel for characters, you feel the emotion that's going on, and seeing it portrayed live and how much people resonated with that, despite that completely unrelatable situation.
Mhm.
I was like, well, I want to do that, and that was kind of where the idea for doing a character-based
Yeah.
storyline song came from for The Silence Hurts the Most. And it's a 7.5 minute song, so it's not, it's not a pop banger. So it was very much the B side from our first EP, and it's always been a favourite of ours as a band. It's really fun to play live. The song itself kind of moves with the lyrics, like it's not verse chorus. It's
Yeah.
this ever expanding kind of changing thing. And Silence Hurts the Most Part Two will be a continuation and take a similar kind of approach to it. Writing those songs like that, not only can I approach it really differently from a lyric writing perspective, I can approach the songwriting instrumentation perspective entirely differently, because it's there to tell a story. It's not there to be a catchy chorus
Mhm.
followed by a verse and another catchy chorus. It's like the song is winding and moving with the story, and that's a really fun way of approaching like just songwriting from an entirely different perspective. It still sounds like us, but it's a completely different version of us in those songs, which is really fun. And I think it's been a bit of a thing where we're like, we have to do a second one, like, and then I wrote that song a while back, and it didn't start out like instrumentally. It did start out as that, but as it was kind of going, I was like, "Oh, this song can continue and keep going." We're like, "Okay, cool. That should
Yes.
be the second one," and then we kind of wrote it with that in mind. Maybe we'll continue. Another actually really strong inspiration for that as a concept is not so much the subject matter, but the idea of bringing back like a song throughout things is we're all big fans of the band Silent Planet, and they have their sort of series of songs called the Depths. I think it's Depths 1, 2, and 3. The first one was on their very first EP, and there was number 2, number 3 on albums past that. And I was like, that's really cool. Like I love the idea of that, where you can keep revisiting a song and a vibe and a subject matter. So it was kind of a combination of loving bands like La Dispute with songs like King Park,
Mhm.
and the concept that Silent Planet did of continuing the same story over different albums and entirely unrelated albums with the same song or different version of the same song. So that's our little mishmash of those two concepts. So
Mm.
we're excited to release that one actually when it comes out, because it's very different from the rest of our stuff because of that. That song is definitely the exception to the rule with how we write music, but
Mhm.
I think because of that, it's a bit special in its own way.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to listening to it now. When you talked about experiencing King Park live, I actually had chills because I also saw them in Munich, and what you said, it's exactly how it
Yeah,
felt.
you know
It's
exactly what I'm on about then.
universal.
Yeah, it is wild, the energy that the crowd and obviously and them brought. I think just the type of venue helped. I think those kind of bands and those kind of shows, the venue is very important. I think it was it Bush Hall in London. I think I saw them for that first show. It was it was no barriers, small stage. I
Mhm.
don't think there was any barriers because he was in the crowd a lot, so I don't think there was. And it wasn't that big a venue, so I think it just that band to crowd interaction, that was a lot of it, and I think that really helped because I've seen them every time I've seen them, they've been great. I think I've seen them like 4 times now, but when there's a barrier and they're a bit further away from the crowd, you can tell the crowd wants to be able to be closer
Yeah.
and interact with it more, probably because they are like so involved with the lyrics. They want to be able to have that involvement. But that first time I saw them, just because I think because the venue was perfect for that, it was like a core memory of a live performance. And I got a few of those different bands over different times that like have shaped what I've wanted to do with music. And I think everything I think that's inspired me musically, that's been like a lasting inspiration, is from a live experience, which is why
Mhm.
I think like it's amazing to see bands like getting massive on the internet purely like before they've even gigged these days. It's incredible that bands can do that, but nothing hits like live music. It's how I got into heavy music. It's how I got into
Mhm.
everything. Like I was going to gigs when I was like 15, like local gigs that no longer exist. That scene's kind of sadly not really a thing in the UK anymore for like under 18s to have like a gigging scene. But yeah, I got it. The first heavy bands I listened to were bands I just stumbled across watching live, and I went into gigs loving stuff like Fall Out Boy, and I still do love Fall Out Boy, but that kind of level of like sort of pop punky sort of stuff, and then just going into like deathcore gigs and having no idea what that was, and then just having it just happen immediately in front of you, and I was just like, this is incredible. I don't get it, I don't know what's going on, but I love it. And that kind of that made the lasting impression of what heavy music is as a feeling, like when it's live. And then seeing that dispute made me go, "Oh, I really want to be able to write stories and make people feel stuff through music." Obviously, I was already a big fan of theirs, but seeing it live like really cemented it. And then the other one of those for me is the first time I saw the band Caspian, because I'm a huge Caspian
Mhm.
fan, like really ambient kind of post rock stuff.
Post-rock, yeah.
And I saw them playing with Defeater, who I'm a massive fan of as well.
Mhm.
And it's a really odd lineup, but I get the impression they're quite close because I've seen them touring in the US together as well. And I still am a huge Defeater fan, but I think they just released third album. But yeah, they've got that similar kind of thing that with La Dispute. It's almost spoken wordy, screaming, story driven, really emotional. Gone to see them. They were amazing. But I had heard of Caspian, but never heard their music. Wasn't really that into kind of post rock ambient stuff at the time. And they came on stage with a gear set up that I was like, this isn't a hardcore band. This is different. Like before they even played, I was like, I know this band is not a hardcore band. What's going on here? And they absolutely blew my mind. Like just they Caspian live are like a force to be reckoned with, and that made me go, I want to do big, atmospheric, slow music live, and that kind of birthed that. And it was very much that kind of in between of Caspian's presence live and La Dispute's energy and crowd interaction. I was like, I want to be in between those two. And that's kind of where LASTELLE is.
Mhm.
Those two bands, I think, did a lot for me and the songwriting, what I wanted to be able to do out of music.
On the 12th of September, you have Exist Volume 2 coming out
Yes.
exactly 1 year after.
Yes. I actually only
So
realised that the other day, that it was exactly a year.
yeah.
We're super excited to get that out. I feel like, I know like every band says this, but like that's really different from our previous release. But
Mhm,
I feel like the second half is quite different from the first half. Like I feel that Tired Eyes was the obvious like first single choice because it's got your big choruses, it's catchy. We hope, but, it sort of screams single. But everything going forward that we're going to release is very different from the stuff from Exist Volume One because I feel like Exist Volume One was very much about big hooks and big choruses and things like that, and whereas they are obviously very present on this part two as well, I feel like the songs are a bit more. They're the other sides of LASTELLE. So, like I said, we had Silence Modes Part Two, which, if you know the first one, is a big, long 7.5 minute sort of post rock song, more, and that's following on from that kind of vibe. And then the other songs that we'll be releasing as well are different from the stuff we've released. So, I think we couldn't release two EPs that sound the same. That'd be a bit silly. So yeah, this one definitely sort of I think latches onto other parts of the style. Yeah, I'm really excited to get those songs out. I think some people will love them. I'm sure some might be like, well, I'm going to carry on listening to Breathe Me In, but I think that my favourite songs are on the second one. As much as I love everything on Volume One, most of my favourite tracks out of all this new stuff, all of the Exist stuff, is on the is yet to be released. In fact, Tired Eyes was one of my favourites. That one has come out, but but some of the stuff to come out is the stuff that I'm like most proud of. Not because I'm not proud of everything, but just I think in my personal tastes. Yeah, as I've said, I'm one of the people probably pushing for the more experimental side
mhm.
of the music, and I think this second half leans into that a bit more.
So Tired As was like a perfect transition between
Yeah,
volume
yeah,
one and
exactly that.
volume
That was
two.
the transitional song that went, here's what you were used to. Now it's going to get a bit different. Hopefully, everyone digs it because we do.
And what do you hope people will feel listening to it?
Well, I feel there's different emotions portrayed in the songs that we'll be releasing compared to ones that have come out. I mean, I'm not saying there's no real happy songs. That's never going to happen. But there's it's just different perspectives and different things that in some cases we haven't really spoken about before. There's some more angry stuff in there, which is stuff that we haven't really done before, and more maybe introspective kind of lyrics as well about like reflecting on ourselves now after the bad things happen, as opposed to
Mhm,
a lot of it where it's talking about that. This is more kind of introspective on how it's affected us, or the perspective of the narrative, how that person's been changed by those
mhm,
events. So yeah, I think it's there's different perspectives compared to what we've done with the Exist Volume One stuff. I think it's darker. I think is the best way to put it for Volume Two. It's overall it's darker.
the way you're talking about it, but then tell me if I'm wrong. You know, there is this whole grief process which can be used for loss or for the end of a relationship, and that it's would be on a new step of the grief process.
Yeah, I think there's
Yes.
some which are very at the end of it, some stuff which is more in the bad bits of it. So yeah, I think it's we one of the tracks approaches more like toxic relationships and more being angry about what you've missed out on or what you've been kept from because of it, and having to try and force your way out of that kind of situation, which I don't think is really something we've touched on before. So that's one of the tracks on there. The track's heavier, the
Mhm,
song's darker, and then obviously about Silence at the most part two. That's very dark subject matter with the story. That's a very different feeling song. I think there's a lot to look forward to for Exist Volume Two, despite its all very depressing nature.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to
Cool. Well,
listening to it and for it
I'm
to be
glad you are.
released.
At least we know there's one person.
Is there a tour planned?
Our next show is Download will be the biggest. I'm imagining will be the biggest show that we've ever done. So that's going to be a really cool thing for a band. For our band, it's the first like major festival we've done. The lineup's great. We're playing on the Saturday with Sleep Token as the headliner. So
Mhm,
to be a cool lineup. Loads of bands, I think that we're hoping that people will be there for them and therefore will like us and is similar. I think there's a lot of Sleep Token fans that will probably like our music, and then there's also like I think Static Dress are opening up, I think, the main stage, and then we're
Mhm.
playing on the smaller stage directly after them. I like to think that people that like their music will like our music.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to it, and just to be invited there was wicked. So that's yeah, that's our next thing in the calendar, and we're very much looking forward to it. We will be out and about for its release, absolutely, and that'll be announced eventually.
For everyone listening, if you know Lastelle or don't, just check them out on Instagram, on Spotify, wherever you listen to music. And if you don't know them, I promise you, you won't be disappointed. And yeah, thank you very much, Jonjo. It was
Yeah,
very
thank you
nice.
for
I
having me.
really
I had a
enjoyed it.
great time.
Me too. For everyone listening, you can follow me on Instagram at Into the Cave Pod. And meanwhile, be kind to yourself. Bye.